Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Clear here with a knife video. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is the first of a number of comparisons that I told you guys I would do, and then some of these you have requested, and I believe this one, it was requested. I have here the new for 2015. Now this is 2016, but this is the updated version of the Cold Steel American Lawman. If you have not seen my initial review of this, or my overall, or my sort of discussion of this knife, go back and check that out. I'm going to compare it today with the Cold Steel Code 4. So both Cold Steels, both of these knives are in a similar price point. They're both under $100. This one's a little cheaper by $10 or $15, the Code 4. Both of these are newly with the good steel, CTSX HP steel. Both of them are kind of, how would you say this? Both of these knives, the reason I think they're so comparable, and that this is going to be a really tough comparison to do, is that both of these knives are very good at a whole bunch of stuff. You know, both of these knives, I would feel totally happy if I had this in the bush, on a construction site, in a suit pocket, you know, they can just do everything reasonably well. You're not really making any major sacrifice, okay? You're not saying, well, you know, this is going to be for this or that purpose. You can just buy this knife and it can be your one and only knife and just do everything. All right, so I think that's pretty impressive. And so both of these, right off the bat, I want to say are highly, highly recommended. Okay, now, in terms of which one is actually better, I'm going to tell you guys right now that I have gone over these knives and over them and over them, and I honestly can say that you're going to watch me literally come to a conclusion on this, because I still can't really tell you if one is better than the other. Subjectively, you know, if you like a certain blade style or you like the look, that's one thing. But in terms of objective, real, measurable differences, it's really, really tough to say which one of these is better. Okay, so let's get started with size and weight. We'll look at the Code 4 first in all of these. You know, I think because this is such a great knife, you know, we'll kind of consider this the challenger, if you will. Size and weight on this is 4.4 ounces. Okay, so very lightweight, very comfortable to carry. 3 5/8 inch blade. Okay, now right away I'm going to tell you my bias is toward larger blades. So I love the blade size on the Code 4. The handle is 5 inches and the overall length of this is 8 5/8 inches. So pretty big knife at a really reasonable price, carries exceptionally well. You know, it's about 3/8 of an inch thick, so very, very thin, very flat, carries like a dream. Okay, and you're getting, for something that's fairly small in pocket, you're getting a pretty substantial blade. All right, I've also had, by the way, the spear point on this, and that one is now sold. It was the AUS 8 version, so I can speak with a little more experience about that knife. I've had a couple different versions. Now, getting over to the Cold Steel American Lawman, we have 4 ounces, okay, and I get most sites listed at like 3.8, 3.9. My scale actually says 4 ounces, so that's what I'm going to call it. 3 3/8 inches of blade. Now again, I prefer larger blades, so that's for me a bit of a detraction. 8 1/8 inches overall, and it's a 4 3/4 inch handle. Once again, it's nice and thin, and that's one of the updates they've made. This is a thinner knife than the original American Lawman, which is a real win. This is much more comfortable to carry. They also, that with thinning it out, it did lighten it up. So really, really comfortable to carry and use. The biggest difference in terms of carry is the length, and it's really only about 1/4 of an inch, right? This is 4 3/4, this is 5 inches. So rarely is it going to make a difference. Now, it just so happens on this rare occasion, I'm wearing about the only pair of pants that I have that doesn't, where this runs into the bottom of the pocket and I sort of have to slide it in crooked like this. Obviously, this one being that 1/4 of an inch shorter drops right in straight, and I don't need to sort of bend it around or cant it over a little bit. That's a pretty rare occurrence, okay? It's only this one pair of pants, and I always have problems carrying a knife in this pair of pants that I have. They're just Old Navy cargo pants, but the pockets are like short in depth, okay? So most of the time, that is not going to be an issue at all. These are both going to carry basically the same, okay? Now, because of that, given the fact that these both basically feel the same in pocket, I've got to give the size and weight to the Code 4 because you are getting quite a bit more blade, okay? And especially when you compare cutting edge to cutting edge, you can see that there's not as much cutting edge on the American Lawman as there is on the Code 4, okay? Now, you may be totally different from me, and I know a lot of guys that I talk to, a lot of guys that comment on my videos, that I dialogue with on Blade forums or different forums, will prefer a slightly smaller knife. And so maybe for you, the American Lawman comes out on top in this category. Now, let me say this while we're still on the subject of size and weight. If, you know, in my wildest dreams, okay, if they did an American Lawman with a 3.5-inch blade, everything was just a little bit bigger, it would be like the knife of my dreams, okay? So I just want to go on record and say that, and if someone from Cold Steel watches this, you know, if you guys made just one size up, a large American Lawman, that would be awesome. And I don't think it's unrealistic, because Cold Steel makes multiple sizes in a lot of their models. I would love to see a one size up in the American Lawman. Now, let's get back to our comparison. I've got a little sidetrack there, but let's compare the blades. So the blade on the Code 4, this happens to be the Tanto blade. There's also a spear point and a clip point. Okay, now that's one of the points of comparison that you need to notice, because of course on the American Lawman, it's only going to be the drop point that's available. So if you like just variation in general, or if you like one of those specific blade types, let's say you only like clip points, well, the American Lawman obviously is not going to be available in some of those variations. Now, they're both hollow ground, but the hollow grind on the Code 4 is a little shorter. Okay, so that means you're dealing with something like this rather than something like this. Do you see what I'm saying there? Since there's less distance here, the grind has to be more abrupt. Okay, this is a very high hollow grind, meaning very thin behind the edge, and it stays thin. So this thing slices like crazy. Also, the blade on the Code 4 is bigger, okay? More cutting edge. If you're talking about a defensive situation, you've got more reach. If you're talking about a working situation, maybe you've got this knife in your pocket and you're camping, you've got a better ability to, you know, let's say you're cutting up a roast, or, you know, cutting fruit, you've got more reach, okay? And sometimes that happens. I cut up a squash for my wife last night. Well, the squash is this big around. What are you going to use to cut it? You've got to have that reach to get across the whole deal, okay? So, both of these are good slicers. They're both fairly thin behind the edge. They're both hollow ground. This blade is definitely bigger than this blade, okay? And there's definitely more variation. Now, let me kind of ruin everything by saying, even though I prefer a larger blade and I love the blade on the Code 4, the blade shape, particularly on the American Lawman, is very good for EDC tasks, and even can flex into a lot of outdoor bushcrafty type stuff. Because it's all belly and it's swept up this way, you can see how the tip is favoring the top of the blade here toward the spine. This becomes a very good skinning knife in addition to everything else that it can do really well. This knife is not going to perform well as a skinning knife, not only in this version, but even the other versions. Although they have more belly, the belly is not as well suited to skinning. In fact, the blade shape on this very much looks like if you were to go to a hunting supply store and buy a knife specifically for skinning, it would have a blade shape similar to this, okay? So that is the one place that this comes ahead. They'll basically do all the same things. This one's giving you more reach and more cutting edge. This one's giving you that one extra sort of ability. So in an outdoor situation, in a survival situation, I would probably take the American Lawman over the Code 4 for that reason, okay? You've got the ability to process an animal a little better. Yeah, the Code 4 would still do it, okay? But the Lawman is a little more suited. Now, let's give it a grade, okay? Which one would we actually want? And I point that out just in case that's your purpose. But which one would I want out of these two more? Which one do I actually prefer? Well, I really don't know, guys. I've got to I've got to go with size. I really like the longer blade on the Code 4. I do overall prefer larger blades, and again, that's one thing that I wish about the American Lawman, is that it was larger. So the Code 4 gets the nod in terms of blade length. And the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that there's more variation. Okay, you can get this model in different blades if that's what you like, where that's not the case with the American Lawman. Obviously, lockup, both of these have the triad lock. This one is a little stiffer right now, but it's also newer, okay? And I will say this, overall, I've noticed a marked difference in the performance, just the feel, okay, of Cold Steels looking back and looking forward, okay? The newer Cold Steels, and I've had both in hand and I've used both together literally at the same time, the fit and finish, the smoothness seems to have improved markedly over in the newer models versus the older ones, okay? Now, so that's the blade, that's lockup and deployment. What about the handle? Now the handle here, guys, is going to be quite a significant difference. We've got G10 versus aluminum. We've got these very deep, pronounced choils versus these comfortable but not as deep choils. We do have the textured G10 versus the very smooth aluminum. So, larger handle, okay, lots of real estate for your fingers here. Very good deep finger choil at the front, so I'm not concerned about, sliding forward onto this blade. And I can tell you that I've done like tire stabbing tests and stuff like that with this, and I haven't had an issue sliding forward onto the blade. However, this one does inspire more confidence. It's just, you are locked in, okay? And you're locked in, number one, because of that very deep choil at the front. You're locked in because of that very grippy G10. So, between the two of these, they're both similar in thickness. They're both, they both got a good lanyard hole. They both, pocket clips work really well. By the way, I will say about both of these, no issue with going in and out of pocket for either one of these. And that is a big deal for Cold Steel fans. You guys, everyone's aware of all the complaints about, hey, Cold Steels, they have these terrible pocket clips that you can't get in and out. Both of these are great. I have no issues with either one of these going in and out of my pocket, okay? Now, this one is a decisive victory for me for the American Lawman, okay? Very comfortable, but in addition to being very comfortable, I've got this option to choke up and move forward on into this big finger choil, and I really like that option, especially for a blade shape like this where there's the potential of doing that fine detailed work. This knife, can you get your finger up here and sort of use it? Yeah, you can, but it's not nearly as comfortable, and certainly not as designed for that as the Lawman is. The other thing is, yes, that G10 is giving more texture and more warmth. It's bitterly cold here in Meaford, Ontario right now, and you're going to notice that cold with the Code 4 in your pocket more than you're going to notice it with the American Lawman. So the handle, definitely the nod goes to the American Lawman for ergonomics and handle design overall. Now, where do I come down on these two blades in terms of which one I would actually buy? If I had to give up one and keep one, which one would I get rid of? This is really tough to say, guys, because I love the Code 4, but I think just in terms of overall versatility, I would go with the American Lawman. It's just a little bit lighter, it's a little more comfortable in hand, and although I wish it were bigger and had more blade shape, there's enough blade here to do pretty well everything that you could want to do with an EDC knife. So, for me, the American Lawman comes out on top. That may not be the case at all for you. I hope this comparison has been helpful. Certainly it's been a lot of fun, and I've got to say I love both of these knives, and really for me it's just fun to talk about these two knives that I really like. These are two very favorite knives, and so it's just fun to be able to share that with you. Alright, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments below which one you would pick and why, and we'll talk to you soon.